Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Talent Finders podcast would like to welcome entrepreneur and president of KO Advantage Group, Kim Orlesky. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Kim, I'd like to congratulate you on all your achievements. Can you please share with our audience about how your entrepreneurial journey started to where you are today?
Yeah. I don't think a lot of people that want to be entrepreneurs consider themselves that's the thing that they're going to go in. But for myself, I had worked in corporate sales for almost a decade and did very well, and decided that I was actually going to celebrate all of my achievements by going and traveling around the world. And when I came back, I decided that that was what I wanted to do instead of actually going back into the corporate world. So if that was going to happen, that meant I had to start my own company. And through iterations and deciding on what that was going to look like, I think I started off being an executive life coach, and I kind of came around, and I was at an event one day and somebody said, you really should be talking more about sales with all your sales experience. And for me, that was the giant brick in the head moment that I had. And I decided to start offering sales training specifically to entrepreneurs and businesses that are selling premium services into other businesses. And don't quite understand how to navigate a high value sales conversation, because that's really what I was trained and learned in corporate sales. Since that period of time, I had received Success Magazine's Most Inspirational Blogger, Startup Canada's Female Entrepreneur of the Year, LinkedIn's Most Influential Sales Leader to Follow. And we have just released a brand new web series as well, where we actually followed 3 businesses as they went through and learned a proper sales process and how that impacts their business.
Amazing. So you're also listed as a LinkedIn top sales influencer and continually named as one of the top sales leaders to follow. So can you please share with us more about this and how this came about?
Yeah. So most of the time, there's some things that you apply for. But things like, being most influential sales leader isn't really something that you find an application you apply for. Really what it is I post as much content as I can on things that I find to be meaningful or helpful to business owners and entrepreneurs. So through LinkedIn, we do a ton of videos, we do a ton of articles, and just continuously being named it. It was one of those things where I was driving into the office and all of a sudden I got these notifications that I was being crazy tweeted. And I'm like, what is going on? And then when I went and took a look at it, I was named as one of the top influencers. So that was really incredible, because all it just said was, if you do good work and you continuously are putting yourself out there, good things will happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So social media is an incredible tool. But with so much information that is put out there and with the information overload, how would you say, or what would you say you do differently, and what is unique? And can you please give us some examples of this?
So I think that the biggest part is, when I talk about sales specifically, I don't try to just be so all encompassing. I find that with social media, if you really want to stand apart, you have to be much more opinionated. And that means you have to say things, with a definitive, like, I believe this. And, and when you are middle of the road, you're straddling on 2 sides of the coin, or saying, well, some people believe this and some people believe this. People enjoy those that are opinionated, because it either gives them something definitive to agree to or something definitive to argue against. And so you need to go in and say, this is what I believe. This is why this opinion is wrong. This is why I believe this opinion is right. And you might truly believe to be a little bit of the middle of the fence, but nobody wants to know necessarily all the information that's out there. If they did, they'd follow researchers. Why they follow, influencers is because influencers say, this is who I am and this is what I believe. And And putting that stamp of your personality on the conversation really allows people to know who they're following, not just what they're following.
Yeah.
The who always should precede the what. And even when we're talking about in sales, especially when I'm talking to things like brand new business owners, I always focus on, who is it that you're selling to? Who is it that you want to connect to before you focus on what it is you're selling? Because if you can connect with the who, when you get to the what, people who like you will like you regardless. And then they'll and they will buy from you. And somebody who's willing to pay $1 to you is more likely to pay another $1 to you. And so get that first dollar, get that first conversation started, and then everything else will start to lead out.
Yes, absolutely. So as LinkedIn is back and seems that more and more businesses and entrepreneurs are using this platform, can you give us some insight into tips and tools for better engagement and to maximize LinkedIn?
Yeah, so post regularly.
Yes.
You should be posting at least once a day, and sometimes even more. And it doesn't. So a lot of people think that in order to post, that means that you have to be creating brand new content every day, and that's so false.
Yes.
Being a really good curator of content is also really valuable. And so that might be, tagging an article that you really enjoyed. That might be, posting a professional meme, right? Memes still have, a very valuable place in the business sense, but don't use anything that's crass or anything that could be considered insulting, right? There's certain things. Infographics are always a good one. LinkedIn actually has a lot of tools, everything from posting videos to articles to whole documents that people can go through. So take a look at that and post as regularly as you can, and don't forget to hashtag, because they might be a little bit late to the game when things come to hashtagging, but it does give people an opportunity to find your articles, especially later on. You might not see the same traction in the first 24, 48 hours, but it's not uncommon to get somebody who likes or wants to comment on something that you wrote a year ago, and you're like, how did you find that? And chances are they found it through a hashtag.
And how many hashtags do you recommend using? Because some people say you can over hashtag too. So I don't know whether that's applicable or not to LinkedIn.
Yeah, well, it is, if you really wanted to, you could use a ton of hashtags. LinkedIn does not limit the number of hashtags you want, but I find 3 to be kind of the ideal number. Anything more than that makes it just give the appearance that you really don't know where your conversation falls. And so, use a variety of different hashtags. Don't hashtag it the same thing all the time, right? So, most of the time my hashtags are sales or sales tips or sales skills. It could be sales training, but occasionally, especially if it's relevant right now, I might hashtag, work from home, money motivation, anything from, meetings, to something else where it then will start to appeal to a wider audience.
Yes, absolutely. So that leads me to the next question. Can you please share with our audience as to why you use LinkedIn more than other social media platforms, and what do you think can be done better in terms of engagement? Because obviously it's gotten a lot more difficult in some instances because of the overload. And how do you go about shifting through the chaos to find and connect with who you're looking for?
Yeah. So, I like LinkedIn. The irony is I actually feel like I'm more authentic on LinkedIn than I am on any other social media, right? Sure. I feel like, I am naturally just a very professional person. I am naturally just one that's wants to share, information and facts. And, and I find that you post an opinion piece on LinkedIn, it's very this is an opinion versus, trying to pose opinion as fact. So I like it in that sense. And, you know, and it's, you know, there is always so much information to be had from it. It's not just, you know, a bunch of people that are posting what they look like, what they're eating, and
Oh
their
yeah, it drives me insane.
yeah, you know, it's actually like relevant articles, and it's like
Okay.
it's tips, and it's like how can you improve your business and how can you improve, and so I really like that. And even occasionally, I mean, you do get the people who are like, listen, like, you know, like hashtag mommy challenges, right? Because you know, we're not just, you know, I mean, somebody I was chatting with broke this out really nicely. She's like, we're not just here like working from home, we're trying to do our work from home. And she's like, and that's a completely different dynamic, because, you know, we have, you know, it's not like, you know, even though some of us are like, you know, working parents and everything, the kids are still going to school, and now they're not going to school. And so, you know, we have to recognize that, you know, there's a certain level of forgiveness in that. So I like LinkedIn for that, because it is very, I find it to be very authentic. Now, the one of the criticisms I have for LinkedIn is that since being bought from Microsoft, I think that they still struggle to figure out how they want to fit in or how they want to differentiate themselves. And so there is that certain aspect on things like everything from reactions, right? Which is like, well, you know, Facebook's using reactions, so maybe we should do reactions. And then they eventually did, or before that, then they started to do the hashtags. And you know, and it used to be that you would post something and it would have a life of, you know, anywhere from, you know, a day, 2 days, even a week, right? You know, if I posted a video, I could easily be getting, you know, feedback on that same video for like 3 days afterwards. And today I find, you know, despite the fact that, you know, I have a very large following, you know, in terms of LinkedIn, I mean, I think I'm, you know, just shy of like 25,000 followers, and it's constantly growing. I also find that the number of views and, you know, views on my posts are significantly going down. And so that concerns me as an influencer, because, you know, then it's like, you know, I'm constantly having to either say one of two things. It's either, do they need me to post more, which we tried that out for a little while. We were actually getting up to a point where we were posting 2 times, 3 times a day. But it's a lot of work to be able to do that. And some, you know, some research is actually showing, you know, even posting as much as like, you know, 4 or 5 or 8 times a day is actually more relevant for LinkedIn. And so, so we have hired somebody who's going to be taking care of a lot of that posting, because, I mean, just posting that much is a full-time job. The other challenge I have with LinkedIn is that, you know, when you do have, you know, those really impactful pieces, there doesn't seem to have the same legs that they typically did. It's very much the new is always better type of approach, and you know, as opposed to quality. And you know, they're obviously trying to use algorithms to figure out where the quality pieces are. But just because you post something and it doesn't get, you know, 100 views right away, does that mean that it's a non-quality piece? So, I mean, it's a little bit more difficult. I truly believe that the future of LinkedIn is in videos. I think that, you know, at some point LinkedIn is going to, there are certain things that other social medias are doing that I truly believe LinkedIn is going to have to do, which is actually going to be a video channel specifically for LinkedIn. The same way that Facebook has a watch channel, I think LinkedIn is going to have a video channel, and they're going to start having to promote mini web series, you know, other pieces of information. I mean, kind of that 2-minute time frame is really valuable. In terms of getting engagement, but in terms of holding on to somebody's attention span, that 6 to 12 minutes is actually even more valuable, because you might not get the same, you know, eyeballs. And this is where I think LinkedIn really needs to take a look at their algorithms. You might not get as many people wanting to watch it for more than 30 seconds, but those that do watch the entire thing. And so I think, you know, LinkedIn really needs to push towards that, because if they're considered to be the social media of the office, you, as much as possible, you want people to be on your platform for 15, 20, 30 minutes, even an hour in a chunk of time, versus having it open in the background and then just doing a quick, like 30-second, 2-minute scroll to see what piques my interest really quickly. And so, so I think that those are some of the changes that LinkedIn is going to have to take a look at. I truly believe that, you know, even with everything going on, I mean, right now it's time. Like, this is, there has never been a better time to be posting content on LinkedIn, because everyone is literally at home and there is no boss that's watching you and
Yes.
ensuring that you're spending your time appropriately.
Yes.
So, things like long form content, like this is your time to start testing it out and pushing it out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've also been titled as Canada's Women Entrepreneur and featured in Success magazine as an inspirational blogger. Can you share with us how this came about, and has this opened doors to more opportunities for you?
Yeah, so the Success magazine was one of the first awards that I had received, and it completely caught me off guard. At the time, I was posting a lot on some of my travel experiences and everything, kind of tying it into what I knew about business, and somebody was actually reading my blog, and they had submitted my blog as one of the most inspirational ones, and I was like completely beside myself because I didn't even know this was a thing. Eventually, I got into some type of short list where they went in for votes, and I was voted in to be one of the top bloggers, and they contacted me and they said, would you do some headshot, would you send us like some information and everything. So it was incredible, and it definitely opened some doors for me at that point in time. And that's kind of where I started to get to the idea that, more awards are actually a good thing, right? Like, I mean, we shouldn't, especially as women, oftentimes we feel shy to kind of like, beat our own drum in the parade,
Yes.
and at the same time, it's, if you're not going to do that, really no one else is. I mean, in this case, I was completely honored to have somebody go and do that for me. But most of the awards that I win, or most of the awards that I apply for, they're application by application, and somebody has to go in and do that. And most of the time that's me, or I essentially get somebody on my team now to do it.
Yeah.
And so even things like, Startup Canada's Woman Entrepreneur of the Year, which was an interesting one, I had to apply for that. And every year they do different types of awards and everything. My feedback or a suggestion is always is look at the criteria for the one area that probably no one else is going to apply for. And the unfortunate reality is there aren't a ton of women entrepreneurs out there.
No.
I think I think it's like for women entrepreneurs, and it depends on what geography you're in, but in some cases it's like, for every 100 entrepreneurs out of there, there's like 5 women. In some cases, I mean, you might get 30, right? You might have a 30%, but we're definitely not talking about a 50-50.
No.
And if we are talking about 50-50, that means they're typically including things like your stay-at-home people, right? Or your solopreneurs. Which a lot of those award categories, they actually want to know, like, are you running a team? Like, do you have employees, right? It's kind of like one of like their defining factors, right? Is it just you, or is there more than just you? And it doesn't have to be more than doesn't have to be more than that, but like, are you, I mean, at the end of the day, they want to know, like, are you making enough revenue that you can afford to afford to feed someone else, right? Are you making enough revenue that someone else is reliant on your success for their success? And so, so I mean, it's, I applied for it, and I was accepted, which was incredible. And I actually wasn't even going to go to the award ceremony. And the more, because I thought, well, like, this is just silly. And the more I was finding out about it, the more I realized, I'm like, oh, actually, this is kind of a big deal, right? And they had actually like rented out a whole theater, and they had like press, and they had like all these people there. So I said, okay, well, I definitely should book a flight and attend this awards ceremony. So, it definitely has opened up some doors for me. As we continue to go into the States, it's one of the awards that I don't promote too much, only because I don't want people to think that I am, quote unquote, small town. We've now officially, are bringing in more revenue from the States than we are from our Canadian counterparts. And so we definitely want to continue to use that leverage.
Absolutely. So as an entrepreneur, you also speak internationally all over the world, and have spoken alongside some incredible leaders and entrepreneurs, just to name a few: Brene Brown, Michelle Obama, Deepak. So can you please share with us more about how this experience came about and what you learned from this?
Yeah. So, I mean, like awards, I mean, oftentimes you have to apply for speaking engagements, and
Yes, of
you have
course.
to know people, you have to apply for them, you have to do a ton of research, you have to reach out cold.
Mm,
I look at, a lot of my speaking events no different than I look at any of my other sales cycles. It's about, sourcing out who you want to work for, who you want to speak for, and then reaching out to them and be like, you know what, like, we need to have a conversation, we need to have a meeting, like, let me talk to you about that.
yes.
The same. So, I mean, the first time I really was accepted for, and I'll talk about one of the bigger ones that I spoke for, which is HubSpot's Inbound.
Mm,
And that one, back in the first time I spoke for them was in 2017. And at that time, I mean, they've been growing significantly since then. But
yes.
that year they brought in 23,000 people, right? I mean, since then, I think now they're in the 30 plus range. I think they might even be at like 33,000 or something in attendees.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, 23,000 people. And I saw an application on there. I was like, you know what, I'm just going to apply. Like, if you don't play, you don't win, right? Type of thing. And I'm
Exactly.
just going to go ahead and apply. And I was accepted. And I was so incredibly like stunned. I was amazed that I was accepted in this.
Mm,
And, I mean, not only that, but it was like, I mean, at the time it was like one of the biggest rooms I had ever spoken for. And so, I mean, there was this extra level of nervousness that I had.
mm,
Today, I mean, those are kind of like my standard rooms, which is the interesting thing, right? You push yourself out of your comfort zone every now and then, and, that becomes your new comfort zone. And so, it definitely has helped, with a lot of, the credibility and, just saying like, listen, I deserve to be here.
yes.
Because an event like Inbound, I mean, they get literally thousands of applications. And when you put out an application that says, I deserve to be here, and
Yes.
they've accepted you, you have to own that. And you have to say, you know what, like, I mean, I have been chosen. It's not about being nervous. It's not about being anything. It's like, no, I have something to share. And what I share is phenomenal. Now, I've been doubly fortunate because I have been also, even though the fact that I've spoken there once, I still have to go through the same application process every year.
Mm,
And so this year will be my 4th year speaking there. And I am like just as honored today as I was in that first year, because I do not take that opportunity lightly. I look
yeah.
at that as, this is a huge platform and an opportunity to be able to be seen in a much larger light.
Yes.
And it's, I mean, has a help like this is absolutely, I mean, because anytime you're able to speak, I mean, it just shows that you have a certain level of thought leadership, that you deserve to be there.
Yes, absolutely. So what would you say are some of your biggest lessons and learnings within your career, and also some of your career highlights?
Yeah. So, I mean, some of the lessons I had in my career were, I mean, specifically around investing. Always, you always start off the first few years and you always feel like, you know what, okay, I'm ready to invest. I'm ready to invest in software. I'm ready to invest in office space. I'm ready to invest in something, because you receive that one big deal, right? And you're like, okay, like this is always the standard. One of the things I've learned is, hold back for a little while, right?
Yes.
See if you can make that, and hold on to like that cash or something for at least 3 months. Because one of the things I will always notice is that things will change, and they will change very, very quickly, which, I mean, I don't even
you
have
need
to.
that buffer, right?
You definitely do. And, I mean, so, I mean, it was both a highlight and a low light for me. Like, but one of my highlights was the first time, because we're a sales training company, was actually the very first time that we were able to bring on a sales trainer to now teach the material. And that was incredible, because when we end up having that for that period of time, it was one of those moments where, like, this is a scalable business. Like, this is actually, we can actually continue to grow whether it is me or not me. And so now this has actually changed a lot of things, where, I mean, we're bringing on a few more sales trainers, but also we're looking at licensing models, which are really cool things to be able to create, because that still gives a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners the opportunity to be trained in a program that works. And it doesn't have to be, it's not because I'm the trainer. It's because the program that has been created works. The low lights, I mean, and I mean, in hindsight now, this is a very fortunate thing, but at the time, I mean, we ran into some significant cash flow issues. So we were investing like crazy. We were spending on events, hoping to get return on investments. We were spending on, different opportunities and everything. And it was like a perfect storm. All of a sudden, like all these deals just did not work out. And we
Well,
were
that's
throwing,
where we met, right?
yeah. Well, and it was just like, I mean, it was so crazy. Like, and
Yeah,
I'm just,
that
why?
just wasn't worth the money. I'm sorry.
Oh my goodness. Like, it was, but I mean, and I truly believe you need to risk, right? You need to go and
Of
try
course.
things. And you need to, like, cause you never know.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've paid to speak at events that just have not turned out. I have invested in opportunities or, let's say marketing or something else like that just didn't work out. Now, I'm not saying that don't invest in marketing, just in that particular marketing at that particular time, that was not a worthwhile investment.
No.
But I truly think that you need to try that. And so anyway, so we had invested like crazy. We're supposed to have all these deals come through, and in this perfect storm fashion, I think I was working like 4 or 5 really big deals, and all like 4 or 5 of them just did not work out. And I'm like, how is this even possible? Like the numbers say like at least 1 in 4 should work out. Like, how is this even possible? And overnight, I ended up having to lay off like all my staff. We were at a team of 7. And this is back in October 2019. And I came into the office and I was in tears, and I said, I have to lay off everybody because we just don't have the cash flow to sustain anyone right now. And so it was a terrible opportunity, or a terrible experience. But I looked at it, I said, okay, well, we're not going anywhere. We're still gonna live. We're still gonna survive. We just need to lean up. And so, we ended up going through with a fine tooth comb, all of our operating expense, everything else at this. Now, I say in hindsight, this worked out because we were already operating super lean when everything with COVID happened, because I was like, awesome, right? I mean, one of the things that we ended up taking out of that experience was, I'm like, we should probably get rid of our office. Like, our office is just not paying us back. We were working out of a co-working space. And the idea with the co-working space was that every line item on my business, I asked myself, does this dollar somehow return us back $4, right? Are we somehow like getting more money or more opportunity out of this because we were making this investment? And part of the charm of the co-working space was that they had this great network of people, these Slack channels and everything else. And, and it's like, you can potentially use like all the people in the network as sales opportunities. And I was like, this is great. Right. Except that it just, for the year that we had that office space, I never once saw a dollar come out of it. It was just like, I think they were curating maybe a wrong group. It was a product market fit or something. So the end of February, we let them know, we're like, listen, we're leaving our office. We're probably going to look for something, maybe a little bit more, cash flow positive, right? So maybe something that's like half the price, something else like this. And so we had actually put in our notice to leave our office at the end of March. And then of course everything happens and we're on our way out. And so there was really no guilt to be had, because it was like, well, we're already halfway through our move.
Yes.
I'm sorry. And so of course, they're trying to hold us back. They're like, would you be willing to stay? Would you be willing to stay? And I said, like, I'm sorry. Like, we've already made our decision. We had already sourced a brand new place. Like, and then at which points then we actually told the new places that we actually weren't going to sign the lease. So it actually worked out really, really well. But I mean, you never know where decisions are going to take you, right? And I think you need to try different things, but also just because you invest in it doesn't mean that you have to stick with that investment. I think that you need to reflect and relook at that every quarter at least, and say, is this investment paying off? Is this giving me back the money that I thought it was going to? I have plenty of examples of great investments and poor investments, but I think that the same thing holds true, is that you have to be constantly relooking and being diligent on your
100%, and cutting expenses where you don't need to spend. That's just the reality.
Absolutely. I mean, there's some things that I think I think every entrepreneur needs to invest in. I think you need to invest in really good mentorship, really good coaches, really like people who know more than you. That is an investment that will pay itself back in dividends. And myself, I mean, I end up, this year I joined a very exclusive peer mentorship group, just because, I mean, I considered going with one-on-one coaching, but I had done the one-on-one coaching before when I was first starting my business, which is probably part of the reason why my business is where it is.
Yeah.
And, you know, and at this point in time, I felt that my next stage would be better served by having a nice peer mentorship group. And so, you know, there's a group of 12 of us. We have a facilitator that that as part of our payment, we meet, you know, for a full day once every 2 months,
Okay.
plus regular touch points. And, you know, and then you have to, you know, and then besides that, then you have to meet with, you know, other members of the group at various times. And the reason I like that, you know, any type of like mastermind or peer mentorship or anything else, is that you get a wide variety of experiences and people outside of your industry who says, you know, maybe you should try this, or maybe this is another path that you should consider.
Yeah.
And so it's incredibly valuable, even when you're giving advice, sometimes by having to explain how you went through something, it makes you think about, oh, actually, what if we did this? Or what if we tried this? So, I mean, it's probably now, that's probably one of my biggest expenses for my business, but hands down, it's one of the most valuable too.
Amazing. Amazing. So I want to touch on the subject of leadership for the moment, or lack of leadership. So what do you believe makes you a great leader, and what do you think you do differently that makes your leadership skills from others different? And what do you believe on a global and national scale needs to happen to improve and change drastically, or change the leadership drastically in this current global narrative?
Yeah.
Which is very controversial, I know.
Yeah. Well, you know, okay. So, one of the things that I mean, one of the things we do as a team is and I noticed the difference in this. So, I mean, you know, when we went through that like that, everything in October, with all of a sudden cash flow I actually pulled back. It was just all of a sudden it's like, okay, no, head down, like, you know, just get the work done. And I noticed my leadership actually falling back, right? I wasn't actually being a very effective leader because I was so focused on getting the results, so focused on getting the numbers, that I forgot that I needed to spend time, you know, planning and strategizing and working with my team to be able to get those results.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we do regularly, and, you know, we've just got back into it. I mean, it fell off for 6 months, but in all honesty, I mean, 6 months was enough to actually see a dramatic difference in this, was we went back to like full day strategic plans, and we went, you know, and I, you know, reset up so that, you know, every quarter I sit down with each one of my team members for an hour and talk about their performance reviews, and, you know, and how do they want to measure success, and how do we ensure that we're, you know, I'm helping them do their job really well. Yeah. And those are things that are like, you know, massive morale boosters, and they make people feel like they're part of something greater. Because I go back to the analogy that the last thing I ever want to be is an octopus with, like, you know, one head and many hands, right? I'm not here to like say, okay, you do this, you do this, you do this, but rather I want everyone to feel a certain level of, you know, that entrepreneurial or intrapreneurial spirit, as organizations will call it, is you want people to be little mini entrepreneurs inside their organization. And how do we help them get to that point? So that, I mean, that's definitely a very important, an important piece, is that, you know, are you taking the time to plan with your team? Are you taking the time for them to understand what the vision and the mission and how we're going to get there? And are you also okay if the team says no, that you leave that idea to the side? Because, I mean, you know, there's been occasions where I'll bring an idea or a thought to the team, and I have to be very careful to not give my opinion too early, because if I give my opinion too early, because I'm the, you know, the quote unquote boss, people are like, okay, well, whatever Kim says, or I just agree with her. And so I have to be very clear that, you know, if I am actually asking for the opinion or for the thoughts of the different individuals, that, you know, I'm very clear and like, okay, everyone has to give their opinion first before I'm allowed to give mine.
Yes, of course. That's very important.
Yeah, I mean, what do I see as the trends going forward? I think, you know, things like work from home is going to be even more so of a bigger trend. I think people are going to start to get themselves into a groove, and they're going to enjoy the freedom that comes with, you know, waking up, pouring a cup of coffee and then going, and starting their workday.
Yes.
And then being done and being able to start dinner early or taking a midday run or something. I don't think that every employee is going to want that all the time, but I think a lot of employees are going to ask for that to be a constant as part of their role, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days a week. And I think we need to be much more accepting and allowing that to happen, because you're going to get better output from people when you give them the freedom to do that. Even when I was working in corporate sales, even from my Xerox days, which was probably, even before 2010, so almost 10 years ago, I was just getting started in that work from home area. And then my next role was 100% work from home. And then, when I worked for American Express, they gave us an office, but they said, your office is a shared office. And so the idea behind that is that they took an office space that was only a third of what they needed for people. And so we never really had a desk or something, right? You had a cubicle, and you could have a locked drawer in there. But you had to accept that there might be someone else that would sit at your desk, right? And somebody else that might be there at any given time. And a few people even had it was 2 or 3 people that would share that desk. And so if that was taken, then you would just take another desk. And so I think those are some of the things that we're definitely going to have to look at. They're definitely things that we're going to have to embrace, because, the time spent working is not correlated to the amount of output you get. No. And even as a company, because I am a young mother, so I say that more, I have a young child. Our youngest is 3 years old. One of the things that I also thought was important was, not having to require everyone to work 5-day work weeks anymore. Yes. And so I made the decision, probably over a year and a half ago even, that Fridays we just weren't going to work. Right? If I wasn't going to work, which I love having my Fridays off just to spend with my son, if I'm requiring myself something, I have to allow everyone else to be required of the same thing. Yes. And so we're only a Monday through Thursday organization. Now I will occasionally do, a few meetings on Fridays and everything. And if people want to catch up on their work on Fridays, they're more than welcome to. Yes. But it's never a requirement, that anybody has to work on a Friday, because yes. You get, in the 4 days that I have people working, I find that I get more output, more success, more productivity in 4 days than I would probably making them work 5.
Absolutely. Well, it makes sense. So that leads me into the next question of, I obviously want to highlight women for the moment. Obviously, this isn't about men versus women, but there are obviously some incredible women with amazing ideas and concepts, but the biggest challenge I've seen, and with many women that I've spoken with, is that most women face is a lack of confidence in closing deals or managing negotiations. So how, as a woman yourself, have you managed to overcome this challenge, and what do you believe you can and have done to support women, and can give us some examples of this?
Yeah. So, I
know that's very broad, and a lot, but yeah, it's come up a few times.
Yeah. There's a lot of things. Okay. So I think the first thing is that, as women, I think we need to really, we need to own where we want to be. Right. And, there's a couple things I have in terms of pet peeves when it comes to especially women entrepreneurs, women groups and everything, is that, and I'm part of some, and I've actually left several because of this, is that there's somehow this expectation that women entrepreneurs should either fall in one of two categories, right? We are typically some of the biggest targets when it comes to any type of MLM or multi-level marketing, because of the freedom, quote unquote freedom, that it allows. But if you do the research, unfortunately most, and I'll say most because I know there's always going to be that outlier out there, most of them spend more money than they ever do make. on creating that. And so,
Yes.
you know, and so you'll see a lot of women that will say, yes, I'm a business owner and I sell, you know, such and such product. And you're like, well, no, you're not. You're actually paying to the other employee. The other pet peeve I have with a lot of women entrepreneurs or women entrepreneurial groups is that they focus a lot on this like very woo-woo crowd. And
Yeah,
I'm,
I agree.
you know, like
I
they focus
totally
on,
agree.
yes, they focus on like, you know, the healers and like, you know, the you know, the life coaches and, you know, and all, you know, these other types of like very and I think there's value in it, but I want to say this very flaky type of area, right, where it's hard to quantify that this output is going to receive this result. And so
Yes,
they
true.
struggle to ever really grow themselves outside of just being a solopreneur.
Yeah,
And that is fine if that's where they want to see themselves as a solopreneur. But there's this big, you know, a like gap in women who are actually building businesses, right?
yes,
Women who are, you know, looking to scale, women who are creating something outside of themselves. And occasionally you'll find these people, right? And I think of, you know, there's this woman named Lara Murphy who actually owns Murphy Construction, right? Which is like, I mean, like, this is incredible, right? You know, to see this woman who is like running an entire construction organization.
yes,
You will see, you know, a lot of women in, you know, recruitment or staffing or HR agencies, which is incredible to see them, accounting firms and everything. But it feels like if you're a woman entrepreneur, you either have to accept that if you want to be a part of women entrepreneur groups, that you have to accept these certain woo-woo groups, or you have to run with these, you know, other types of groups, which are typically very male dominated. And
yeah.
there
So then you get the whole masculine versus feminine
and
scenario going on.
and there's nothing wrong with that either, right? But I
Yeah,
mean, like, you know, like I speak of like, you know, my peer mentorship group, which has, you know, 12 members in it, and it's me and one other woman, which means that there's 10 men that
yeah,
are a part of this. And this is not an anomaly, because when I look at, you know, similar groups run by, so it's an organization and they run various peer mentorship groups. I also speak for this group.
yeah.
And majority of them are, I mean, last week I was speaking to 3 separate groups, and probably out of the, let's say 30-40 people that were in attendance in those 3 days, there was probably maybe a handful of women. I want to say honestly there was less than 5 women out of 40 you know, in total attendance. And so I feel like there is this massive gap for people who are like, you know what, we want to help business women support business women. And I think we need to like start drawing the line on certain types of criteria to make these powerful women feel like they're more inclusive. But there are a lot of groups out there that are trying to bridge that gap. Like I think of, you know, there's a specific venture capitalist firm called the 51. And their mandate is to invest specifically in female run organizations, because they said, here's the thing is that, you know, 51% of the world population is women, right? Which is why they call themselves the 51. And yet we have, you know, 95% of all venture capital going to male run companies.
100%.
And as, you know, and I mean, and we're having men that are actually running female dominant industries as well, which is, I mean, I was in a session where they had these feminine products, or reusable feminine products there, and it was run by a man. And I went to a session where a gentleman was asking for venture capital, and he was promoting travel dresses for women, and it was run by a man. And I'm like, okay, well, these are great, like, you know, and they're great products, and I fully support them. I'm like, I always go for the product, right? But I'm like, why was there never a woman who was coming up with these ideas, right? Why are we not, you know, why were these now having to be created by men? And so so there is, you know, there is a certain level, but I think it starts, you know, how do we change this? I think it starts actually right from conference organizers to, you know, like lists of books and people to follow and everything. And I think we need to look at this, like, are we actually creating a certain level of inclusiveness and diversity? And diversity
I
doesn't
think that's the thing. That's the thing.
is.
It's being inclusive, 100%.
I mean, and I'm gonna promote HubSpot for a little bit. Like Inbound does an incredible job of ensuring that 50% of their speakers are women, and they do an incredible job of like looking for physical diversity as well. Like are these people, are they aligned in something other than pale, male, and stale?
Yeah,
At the end of the
exactly.
day, right? Like do they
Yeah,
look like something different? And
yeah,
because I mean, it goes to, I mean, Hollywood was promoting this for a long time, right? Diversity matters, is because when you see it, you can be it.
yeah,
And and so when we see things like I mean, one of my biggest pet peeves is also around where they promote like the best books, sales books of all time, right? And I'm a sales author, and yet I will look at these entire lists of like there was one company that did a they did it as like March Madness, right? Okay, out of these two books, who do you vote for? Out of these two books, who do you vote for? And so they started off with 50 books until they ultimately got to the top one. And out of the 50 best sales books of all time,
mm,
I think they may have chosen 5 as female authors.
mm,
And so that immediately puts us at a disadvantage, because how do we ever see ourselves as a as an opportunity to help promote? And and I remember getting really mad at a conference organizer because they brought in like 12, they called this big sales summit or something else of this. They brought in 12 speakers, and there was not even a single woman listed on there. Eventually they did list a woman on there, but her role was actually to interview another speaker. So it wasn't even
yeah,
that they're asking her for her thought or her opinions, but rather, could you facilitate a fireside chat
yeah,
type of conversation? And so I think we need to be much more demanding on where our dollar goes and where
yeah,
we're spending our time and money and attention. Because when I look at those types of events, I'm like, I'm not gonna go to this. I'm
no,
not gonna promote where I'm gonna be listening to essentially 12 angry men all talk to me about why sales is different and sales matters, right? When you can't tell me that you can't search and find somebody who is just as prolific in that types of conversations that can
yeah,
also be a symbol of diversity. And we need to be much more reflective of a general population than we are of others. Now, the argument we get specifically in sales is like, well, there's not as many female salespeople in the conversation, and which brings us back to the circular reference. Well, there isn't, because they don't see themselves as being it, which is then for why we can't find them.
yeah,
So when we do
exactly.
find somebody, we need to put a spotlight on that person,
Mm,
right? And say, what, they're different, right? And we're going to celebrate them because they're bringing different experiences, different conversations, different opinions, different background to
yeah,
the conversation, which makes you think differently. Nobody wants to be told the same old, same old, same old
no,
about any type of industry.
exactly. So that leads me to the last two questions. You have a passion for entrepreneurs, and you've traveled the world extensively. So what legacy would you like to leave, and what are the 3 key pieces of advice you would give to other entrepreneurs?
Yeah. So, I mean, the biggest one is really this entity that I've been creating as KO Advantage Group, which is that I want, my goal is to, when people start their own business, that they start to see starting my business and learning how to sell that service as
Yes,
synonymous as part of that business, the business beginnings,
yes,
right? Too many people right now see as starting my business and getting a website and business cards and everything else like that as like the first stage. And I would love to leave that as a legacy, and saying like, what, like one of the best things I ever did was actually learn how to sell my services, learn who to sell it to, how to sell it, and get in touch with people. Because things like websites and business cards and pretty Facebook quotes on ads can always be sourced out to somebody,
yes,
right? Whereas you are your service. So I mean, that's definitely a legacy that I would love to leave. I'd love to have KO Advantage Group become something that is, I mean, it's already bigger than myself, and I would love to see that continuing, where I mean, one of our big missions is to have 1 million graduates out of our program by the time we get to 2030.
yes.
And I think that would be absolutely incredible.
Mm,
I mean, I would love to continue to write, and I'd love to continue to inspire. And so one of the things that we typically do is, I mean, you know, I truly believe that education should be available. And so, you know, I spent a ton of time writing my first book, and, you know, and now I just give it away. Like, you can just download the entire book for free, because I think that it's more valuable to get the right information in the hands of people than it is to feel like I need to nickel and dime people. I mean, I could sell it for 99 cents or $7, but really, what is that going to do? You know, if you truly believe, if you're truly, you know, set on starting your own business, and you truly don't have a dollar left to invest yet, then, you know, let me help you with that, right? As opposed to saying, well, you know, if you don't have, you know, $6.99 to buy this book, then, you know, probably you're not serious enough about your business, which I don't think is the case. I think that, you know, there's so much opportunity out there. And so when it comes to things like entrepreneurs and starting your own business, what would be
What would be your 3 key pieces of advice?
My 3 key pieces of advice. I think it's, you know, get really clear on your numbers, get clear on your cash flow position, get clear on how much you need to sell, who you need, like, and how many deals you need to do. And I mean, start off, one of the simplest things you could ever do is just figure out a sales funnel. This is the number of deals I need to sell. This is the average price point I'm going to sell it at. This is how many conversations I need to have on a weekly basis. Like, that is, you know, hands down one of the first things that people need to focus on. And you might feel like, well, I'm not really sure what my price should be. Start with some number and then figure it out from there. And what you'll figure out is, if you're trying to sell it at $500 and it means that you need to have, like, you know, 100 conversations every week, you're probably not going to do that. And so it's like, okay, well, then maybe I need to actually increase my price, right? Maybe I need to, like, you know, actually create something that's a little bit more valuable with the time that I could spend out there trying to attract new clients, trying to attract new business. So that would be my first piece of advice, is get to know your numbers. I think that would actually fall into my second one, is get to know what your sales funnel looks like. You know, understand what a sales funnel is, understand what that is. And I'm going to, you know, I'll give you the link as well on how to download my entire book for free, because that will also help you understanding your sales funnel numbers. And the third piece of advice I could possibly get you is, you know, get yourself a really good network of people. Find other people outside of your industry that can help you out, right? Invest. If you're going to invest in something, invest in a mentor, invest in a coach, invest in in some type of tribe where people can challenge you and push you to do things that you never thought possible, because that's where some of the best ideas will come from.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much, Kim, for your time. And if people want to get in contact, what is the best platforms to reach out to?
Yeah. So, I mean, the best place to find me will be on LinkedIn. You can go and check me out at you know, just Kim Orlesky is the best place to go, or you're more than welcome to go and check out my website. The link for the book is bit.ly/sellmorefasterbook, where you can actually download the entire book for free.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and hopefully we can have you back in the future and see how everything has changed.
Yeah.
COVID-19.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.